Have you ever sat in a quiet house and wondered what happened? There was a time when you were part of everything. You got the call when your grandchild took their first steps. You were the one they ran to when they scraped their knee. You knew their favorite color, their favorite snack, the stuffed animal they couldn't sleep without. And now, it's been weeks, maybe months, maybe longer than you want to admit, even to yourself, not because your grandchild stopped loving you, but because someone decided you no longer get to be there. If that pain is familiar to you, I want you to stay with me today, because what you're carrying right now is one of the heaviest things a grandparent can carry, and you deserve more than silence. You deserve to understand what's happening. You deserve to know what you can actually do. And you deserve to hear, clearly and without hesitation, that there is still hope. This is not the end of your story, not even close. Let's start here, because understanding why this is happening is the first step toward knowing what to do about it. When a grandparent is kept from their grandchildren, it rarely happens all at once. It builds. A missed holiday, a shorter visit, unanswered texts, and then one day the door closes, sometimes with a cold message, sometimes with silence that just never ends. So why does this happen? There are usually a few patterns, and one of them, or more than one, may feel familiar to you. The first reason is a breakdown in your relationship with your adult child. This is the most common root. Something happened between you, a disagreement, a wound that was never fully addressed, tension that built up over years. And at some point, your child decided that the safest thing they could do was create distance, not just from you, but from everything that reminded them of the pain. And because you are their parent, and because you love their children, you became part of what they needed to pull away from. That is devastating. But it's important to understand, this is usually not about your grandchildren at all. It's about the relationship between you and your child. And until that relationship begins to heal, the door to your grandchildren will likely stay closed. The second reason involves a son-in-law or daughter-in-law. You may have already felt this, a shift in your child after they got married, a distance that wasn't there before, a sense that someone else was now shaping how your child saw you. This is more common than most people talk about. A spouse who feels threatened by how close your child is to you. A spouse who comes from a very different family background and doesn't understand the bond you've always had. Or a spouse who has their own wounds, their own complicated history with parents, and who sees you through that lens, even when you've done nothing to deserve it. It's painful to think about, but if you've noticed that things changed around the time of a marriage, this may be part of what's happening. The third reason is something harder to hear, and I want to say it with as much gentleness as I can. Sometimes, without meaning to, we cross lines. We offer advice when it wasn't asked for. We disagree openly with how our grandchildren are being raised. We say something in the heat of a moment that we can't take back. We show up too often or too intensely, and what we meant as love, they experienced as control. This doesn't make you a bad grandparent. It makes you human. But it's worth sitting quietly with that question, even if it's uncomfortable. Is there something I did or something I said that I haven't fully acknowledged? Not to blame yourself, but because honest reflection is the beginning of repair. The fourth reason is something that has been growing in recent years, and it affects families all over the country. Social media has made it almost fashionable, and that's the only word I can think of, to cut off family members and label them toxic. And while there are absolutely situations where cutting off is necessary and right, there are also many situations where it isn't, where a misunderstanding became a movement, where a conflict that could have been resolved became a permanent door slamming shut. If you feel like you've been labeled something you're not, if you feel like you woke up one day and suddenly you were the villain of a story you didn't recognize, you are not alone, and you are not crazy. The fifth reason is simply fear. Your adult child is afraid, afraid of conflict, afraid of repeating patterns from their own childhood, afraid of losing control over how their children are raised. And sometimes, keeping you away from your grandchildren is how they manage that fear. It isn't right, but it is real. Now, you may be sitting there thinking, but I didn't do anything. And that may be entirely true. Or you may be sitting there thinking, I know I played a part in this, and I don't know how to fix it. That may also be entirely true. Either way, and this is the most important thing I'll say in this section, the only part of this situation you can actually control is yourself, your response, your choices going forward, and that is where we're going next. Before we talk about what to do, I want to sit with you in what this actually feels like. Because this kind of loss doesn't have a clean name. When someone dies, people bring food. They say, I'm sorry. They understand the grief. But when you're cut off from your grandchildren, when they're alive, when they're growing up right now, when they're having birthdays and first days of school and ordinary Tuesday afternoons, and you're not there, there's no word for that. There's no ritual for it. There's no casserole on your doorstep. Some days it lives in quiet places. You pass a toy in a store and your heart catches. You hear a neighbor mention their weekend with the grandkids and you have to look away. You see a photo someone else posted and you realize your grandchild looks different now, older, and you weren't there to see it happen. Other days it's loud. It takes over. You lie awake, going over conversations in your mind, wondering what you said, what you could have said differently, whether any of it would have mattered. You write messages and delete them. You pick up the phone and put it down. That grief is real. Please don't let anyone minimize it, including yourself. There is a term some therapists use for this kind of loss. It's called ambiguous loss. It's the grief that comes when someone is still alive, still out there in the world, but absent from your life in a way you can't fully explain or resolve. It is one of the most disorienting kinds of grief there is, because it doesn't follow the usual rules. There's no closure. There's no clear ending. There's just the waiting, and the not knowing, and the love that has nowhere to go. And I want to say this clearly. What you're going through is one of the most difficult things a human being can experience. You are not dramatic. You are not overreacting. You are a grandparent who loves your grandchildren, and that love is being blocked. Of course it hurts, but here is also what I know. That love, the very love that is breaking your heart right now, is also your greatest resource. It is the thing that will carry you through this, because it is real, and it is strong, and your grandchildren will feel it, even across the distance, even now. Now let's talk about the mistakes most grandparents make in this situation. Not because you've done anything wrong on purpose, but because when we're in pain, we reach for whatever feels like it might help. And sometimes the things that feel most natural are also the things that make everything worse. The first mistake is trying to reach your grandchildren directly when the door is closed. I understand the impulse. Of course you want to call them, to show up, to let them know you're still there. But if their parents have made it clear they don't want contact, going around them will almost always backfire. It puts your grandchildren in the middle. It gives your adult child more reason to see you as a threat, and it damages what little trust may still exist between you. This is hard to hear, but it's important. Your path back to your grandchildren runs through their parents, not around them. The second mistake is reaching out in anger. You've been hurt, maybe deeply, unfairly, in ways you never deserved, and you have every right to feel that. But sending a message when you're at your limit, a long email full of everything you've been holding in, a voicemail where your pain spills out as blame, almost never opens a door. It closes one, sometimes permanently. Your anger is valid, but it needs a place other than your adult child's inbox. The third mistake is enlisting other family members. asking your child's sibling to intervene, telling cousins, aunts, uncles, trying to build a coalition. This almost always makes things worse. Your adult child will feel ambushed. They will feel like you're trying to manipulate them, and they will pull back further. The fourth mistake is issuing legal threats too early. We'll talk about legal options later, because they do exist, but using them as a threat, saying things like, "I'll take you to court," before you've exhausted every other option, tends to escalate conflict to a place that's very hard to come back from. A family law attorney once described it as performing surgery with a chainsaw. The legal system can be a last resort. It should almost never be a first move. The fifth mistake is sending a flood of messages, gifts, and cards when you've been asked not to. Again, I understand. It comes from love. But if your adult child has set a boundary around contact, pushing through it doesn't show love to them. It shows that you don't respect their boundary. And that perception will make reconciliation harder, not easier. Holding back is one of the hardest things you'll ever do. But restraint, in this situation, is often an act of love. Now, let's talk about what you can do, because there is a path forward. It isn't easy, it isn't guaranteed, but it is real. This may surprise you. You came here looking for ways to get back to your grandchildren, and I'm starting by telling you to take care of yourself. But I need you to hear this, because everything else depends on it. You cannot heal a relationship when you're running on empty. You cannot stay patient, stay calm, stay hopeful when your body is worn out and your heart is breaking and you're not sleeping and you're not eating and you've forgotten what it feels like to do something that brings you joy. Think of it this way. On an airplane, they tell you to put on your own oxygen mask before helping others. Not because your life matters more, but because you can't help anyone if you can't breathe. That's where you are right now. You need air. So I want you to ask yourself some honest questions. Are you sleeping? Are you eating things that actually nourish you? Are you moving your body? Even just a walk around the block, even just 20 minutes, because movement does something for grief that nothing else does. Are you connected to people who care about you? Are you investing in your own life, your friendships, your interests, the things that make you who you are? Or have you put all of that on hold while you wait? Your grandchildren don't need a version of you that has collapsed under the weight of this. They need the real you, the whole you, the you that still has light to give. Taking care of yourself isn't giving up on them. It's preparing yourself to be there for them when the door opens. Step 2. Focus on the relationship with your adult child. This is the most important strategic move you can make, and it's the one most grandparents resist, because it feels like giving in. It feels like rewarding bad behavior. It feels deeply, profoundly unfair, and yet, your adult child is the gatekeeper. They hold the key. And until something shifts in that relationship, until there is even a small amount of thaw, a small opening, a moment where they feel heard rather than argued with, the door to your grandchildren will stay closed. So what does focusing on that relationship actually look like? It does not look like a long message, laying out everything they've done wrong. It does not look like an explanation of why you were right. It does not look like guilt. It looks like this: a short, calm, honest note. Something like, "I miss you. I'm not reaching out to argue or to revisit what happened. I just want you to know I'm here, and whenever you're ready to talk, I'm open." That's it. No pressure, no timeline. Just a door left slightly open, and then you wait. Not passively. We'll talk about that in a moment. But you give them space to come toward it in their own time. If they do respond, even briefly, even coldly, listen, not to defend yourself, not to correct the record, just listen. Let them say what they need to say. Let them feel heard, even if what they're saying is hard to hear. because when someone finally feels truly heard, something in them begins to soften. It doesn't happen overnight, but it begins. And if there is something, anything that you did, even inadvertently, that contributed to this situation, find a way to acknowledge it, not groveling, not taking blame for things that weren't yours, but a genuine, quiet, heartfelt, "I see that I hurt you. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry." Those words, when they come from a real place, can open more doors than years of trying to convince someone you were right. Step 3. Keep loving your grandchildren, even from a distance. This is the part that most people don't think about. Because when access is blocked, the natural instinct is to stop sending cards that might get thrown away. Stop writing letters no one is reading. Stop reaching towards someone who isn't reaching back. But here's what I want you to consider. Your grandchildren are growing up right now, and somewhere inside them, they know you. They remember you. Maybe only in small, soft ways. The way you smelled, the sound of your voice, a song you used to sing. Children hold on to more than we realize. And there are things you can do, right now, even with the door closed, that will matter more than you know. Write a memory journal. It doesn't have to be elaborate. Just a notebook where you write your memories, the ones you shared with your grandchild, the ones you hope to share one day, the things you want them to know about your life and your heart, stories from your own childhood, what you've learned, what you believe, what you love. One day, when the door opens, and I believe it will, you will give them this journal, and they will know, in a way nothing else could show them, that you never stopped loving them, that you never gave up, that you were there, even when you couldn't be there. Create a memory box. Gather the photos, the small mementos, the things that tell the story of your family. Put them somewhere safe. When the time comes, these will be gifts beyond anything you could buy. Build a digital treasure chest. Photos, videos, voice recordings. Your voice telling them a story, singing a song, saying the things you wish you could say to their face. Technology gives us ways to preserve love across distance that didn't exist a generation ago. Use them. And if it feels right, if there's no legal barrier preventing it, keep sending birthday cards. Keep sending holiday notes. Short, warm, simple. You don't have to know if they arrive. You don't have to know if they're read. You send them anyway, because the love inside them is real, and that's what matters. Step 4. Understand your legal options carefully. This is an area many grandparents are curious about, and it deserves a calm, honest conversation. In many states, grandparents do have legal rights to petition for visitation with their grandchildren. But those rights vary widely depending on where you live and the circumstances involved. If you had a close, established relationship with your grandchildren before access was cut off, if there's documented evidence of that bond, you may have grounds to pursue something legally. But I want to be honest with you about what the legal path looks like, because going in with clear eyes is important. It is expensive. It can cost thousands of dollars and sometimes tens of thousands. There is no guarantee of success, and perhaps most significantly, it can make an already wounded relationship dramatically worse. When grandparents take their adult children to court, the conflict tends to escalate to a place that is very hard to come back from. Even if you win, you may find that you've lost something you can't get back. This is not to say you shouldn't explore it. If there are concerns about your grandchildren's safety, legal intervention may be not just appropriate, but necessary. And knowing your rights, understanding what options exist, is something every grandparent in this situation deserves to know. But if it can wait, if there are other paths still open, treat the legal route as a last resort, not a first step. Because the goal isn't to win. The goal is to have your grandchildren back in your life in a way that lasts. Step 5. Build your support team. This is the step most people skip, and it's one of the most important. You are not meant to carry this alone, and carrying it alone, the grief, the uncertainty, the waiting, the wondering, wears you down in ways you may not even notice until you're running on empty. So let me ask you, who is in your corner right now? Do you have a friend, someone who will listen without judgment, without sharing what you've said with others, without trying to fix everything? Someone who can simply sit with you in this? Do you have a pastor, a spiritual advisor, someone who can hold the deeper questions with you? The why is this happening? The where do I find strength to keep going questions. Have you considered talking to a therapist or counselor? Someone who specifically understands estrangement and ambiguous loss. This is not a sign of weakness. It is one of the wisest things you can do. Because grief of this kind, held alone for too long, has a way of turning into bitterness. And bitterness closes doors that love might have opened. There are also support groups, both in person and online, made up of grandparents who are living exactly what you are living. Alienated Grandparents Anonymous has chapters across the country. Being in a room, even a virtual room, with people who understand, who don't need you to explain what this feels like, who simply know, that can change something in you. You don't have to be strong alone. In fact, the bravest thing you can do right now is ask for help. I want to talk to you about something that is hard, but true. This may take a long time. Not because you're doing anything wrong, not because the outcome is hopeless, but because healing, real healing, between people who have been hurt rarely happens quickly. It moves at its own pace. It requires patience that sometimes feels impossible. It asks you to keep showing up, keep being the same steady, loving, open presence, even when there is no visible response. That is an enormous ask. I know it is, but here is what I also know. Your grandchild is growing. Right now, as you read this, they are learning things and noticing things and becoming a person. And the questions they are growing toward, who am I? Where do I come from? Who loves me? Those questions will eventually lead them toward you. Children who were cut off from grandparents often seek them out when they're older, when they become adults themselves, when they start to form their own questions about family and identity and the people who shaped them. This happens more often than we hear about, because the stories of reunion don't make headlines the way the stories of estrangement do. Your grandchild will one day be old enough to find you, to reach out, to ask questions. And when that day comes, you want to be someone they can find. Someone who kept the door open. Someone who didn't let bitterness take over. Someone who loved them, steadily and quietly, across all the years. That's the long game, and it's worth playing. I want to close today by saying something I hope you'll carry with you long after this ends. Your love for your grandchildren is real. It has always been real. And no amount of distance, no amount of silence, no court order or closed door or unanswered message, none of it can unmake what you have given them. The years you were present, the memories you created, the love they felt, in ways they may not have words for yet, but that live inside them nonetheless. That doesn't disappear. Children carry the people who loved them in ways they don't fully understand until much later. The smell of someone's kitchen, the sound of a voice reading a story, the feeling of a hand holding theirs. These things are written into a child in ways that last. You are in them, even now, even with the door closed. So take care of yourself. Tend to the relationship with your adult child with patience and humility. Keep loving your grandchildren from wherever you are. Seek out people who can walk this road with you, and hold on to hope, not as a naive wish that things will be easy, but as a choice, a daily, deliberate choice to believe that love finds its way back, even when the road is long. You are not invisible. You are not forgotten, and this story is not over. There are still beautiful chapters ahead. We covered a lot today. We talked about why this happens, the 5 most common reasons a grandparent finds themselves on the outside looking in. We talked about the grief that comes with this kind of loss, and why it's one of the hardest things a person can carry. We talked about the mistakes that are easy to make when you're in pain, and we talked about 5 things you can actually do, starting today, not to force the door open, but to stay ready for when it does. You are still their grandparent. Distance doesn't change that. Time doesn't change that. And the love you've given them, the memories, the presents, the years, none of that disappears just because a door is closed right now. This has been Family Bonds After 60. Take care of yourself. And remember, your grandchildren are growing up. And love, even when it has to wait, has a way of finding its way home.